Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining the Column EDC Coffee Chat, Coffee with Colleen. We appreciate you joining us today. We are really excited to have our friend and neighbor, Robert Beebe, join us. He's the president of the Olympic Game Farm, which is such a huge attraction for our area and an important tourism business, a primary tourism draw for our area. And it's anyone growing up around here, it's been an important part of our lives and part of the joy as kids and parents watching kids. So I'm going to go ahead and let Robert take it away, but just a couple things quickly. If you'll keep yourself on mute so we don't inadvertently hear background noise. And then also, if you have any questions, Robert would be happy to answer them. He's got a slideshow for us, and then if you'd rather I ask the question, you can put the question in the chat. So with that, Robert, thanks so much for joining us, and go ahead and take it away.
All right. Well, thanks for having me this morning.
Yeah.
I know it's been a long time coming.
That's right. We've been trying to get Robert to do this for a while, but now the timing is right. So we're really excited to have him.
Yep, timing is right. And you guys are the first.
All right.
So, okay. So we can get started here with my fancy slides. Working off of two screens. There we go. Everybody see them?
Yep.
Yep. All right. So I updated this the other day. This is from a deck I've had from several years ago. It's still pretty applicable. I just updated some high points in it. Like I said, I'm the president of the Olympic Game Farm. I co-own it with my brother, James, who's the vice president. And until recently, it was Ken Beebe as well. He passed away last March. So it's just the two of us now. Let's see if I can. So the history of the game farm. Right there is my grandfather feeding, that looks like it's Bozo or Ben for Grizzly Adams. Giving a little treat. It's a bit wordy. Sorry, I'm not a good PowerPoint person, but back in the 30s, he bought the farm with his father here. They used to live in Nooksack and up in the Bellingham area, and they moved to Forks. I still have quite a few Beebes out of the Forks. They're from the different branch of the Beebes, but they had like 11 kids or so. They're all kind of spread around. So some of you guys probably heard some other Beebes in the area. They are related. It's usually through aunts and uncles through my grandfather's side. But he did spend some time in Forks. So he did a lot of logging. He was also a woodsman in those days, and a bow hunter. And back then, cougar was on the list of the state for bounties, and that was how money was being made. Which was when the Department of Fish and Wildlife started doing things. He yeah, so at the time, Fred Binky and Fred Rice served as the game wardens, and I bring those up because I guess they did some wildlife photography back when they had their own film cameras, and every time he would meet them up on the trails or whatever, he was fascinated with their films that they were doing. So he was always quizzing them about how the cameras were operating and such. So he started off pretty young trying to figure out how cameras worked, and they helped him. Uh, they nurtured that desire. So the farm was purchased in 41. It was going to be a dairy farm and a mink farm. They're going to raise mink. And during his times up in the mountains, he'd come across some orphans here and there. And back then, it was okay to, if it was orphaned, you could bring it home, which he did. So he raised some cougars and some black bears and stuff. My dad was 3 years old at the time. So during the 40s, Walt Disney was looking for some wildlife films by professionals and amateurs alike. He put an all call out in a variety trade magazine and newspapers. And since he had been experimenting with his own film camera and working with Fish and Wildlife on how to do filming, he made a short, I forget how many minutes it is, it's like 10 or 15 minutes, a little short film that he did himself. And it featured my dad, who at 3 years old was already pretty good at shooting a bow and arrow. So he was getting film of him shooting red balloons out of the air and things like that. He made a little story behind it. And he would go around with his buddy black bear cub and a buddy cougar cub, and they'd be hiking through the mountains. And so he got that on film. At first, he wasn't going to send it in to Disney Studios, but my grandmother kind of did some things on the sly, and because he was a shy guy, uh, didn't like tooting his horn too much, so she sent it in. And I guess a few months later, he got a letter and a call saying that Walt wanted him at Burbank. So I guess he went. At Burbank, he said he went there to so Walt could teach him a bit how to improve his filmmaking styles. So I know we all like to think my grandfather was a trainer in all that stuff. He was more of a filmographer, but he knew what the animals were going to do, and he could get them to do things in a natural way that professionals just couldn't quite grasp. And do it in your backyard, not on a stage set uh, or something like that. So that's kind of what got him noticed. His first film that he was assigned by Disney was sent him to Arizona to work with some people down there. It was The Living Desert and Vanishing Prairie. Uh, People may remember that. I think you can still watch it on the Disney Channel. So he was there to gain experience in working alongside film crews uh, and so on. So during that time, we were exclusively doing Disney films up until 72. We weren't open to the public then because Walt considered the animals that we were using in his films as his animal stars. So you know, didn't want the public in there, even though people wanted to come in. Then, as we know, Walt died before 72, but in 72 is when Roy Disney, his brother, passed away out. And then the Disney Studios went to a more of a, you know, business business model with the board of directors and such. So my grandfather and my grandmother decided to test this theory that people wanted to come in and look at the animals, so they charged $1 to see how it worked without telling Disney. They just did it. And then when it looked like it was going to be a thing to do, then he went to Disney and they said, "Go ahead, it's okay. You can open it up to the public." And they were going to go a different route. They're going away from the animals at that point for most things, which was kind of neat. Um, so we established it was originally Disney's Wild Animal Ranch. Then in 73 became incorporated after Disney gave the blessing to go ahead to open to the public and became the Olympic Game Farm. Um, so yeah, so then you could do what I always wanted was to share the animals and see how what they could do and talk about them and talk about the different types of species and stuff that we were working through. There's that. I got here in 2008, and then my brother got here in 2010. Uh, I retired from the military in 2007, which is why I came back up here. And my brother,
What'd you do in the military?
I was in the Navy. I was a jet engine mechanic working on airplanes,
Got it.
fighters, and
Got it. Mhm.
all that fun stuff, all that Top Gun flight deck stuff everybody likes to see.
Cool.
Still miss it. It's fun times up there. So here's some of the films back in the day that we did. Some of them you might remember the most, like Charlie the Lonesome Cougar. That's still being played quite a bit. Though a lot of that was filmed here and down in the Hoh River and down parts of Oregon. You can even see some of the old mill works in Carlsberg where they were doing the log roll with the cougar. That was in Carlsberg when they had the mill there before it became the business district. Uh, uh, there's a scene in there where it has our red barn on the farm where the dairy farmer was feeding the young Charlie the milk or the cat and the milk in the dairy farm there. That's here at the
Which movie
farm. You
was
can
that?
see in the background.
Lonesome
What's
Cougar.
that?
Robert, which movie was that?
Charlie the Lonesome Cougar.
Okay, got it.
Yep. Yep. And a cool story I heard with that one was when they were trying to train the cougar to ride the log down the log flume, that they would drive up and down Ward Road on the back of a trailer and have the cougar walk back and forth while it was in motion, so he would be comfortable for the scene. Then he got too comfortable, so they had to start shaking it on him so that he would get that fear look to it for the film. Then we did the Grizzly Adams series for quite about 2 years, I think, is when that series lasted. But it was pretty popular back in the day.
Mhm.
Um,
I remember it.
yeah,
Living in Germany, I think, at the time.
yeah,
Yep.
it was a good
Dan
show.
Haggerty came out quite a few times.
Yeah,
He was out on a Saturday during one of the shows with Bozo, and he stayed the whole day. It was pretty cool.
yeah, he came out quite a bit. He had quite a few friends out here. I think he used to hang out a lot a bit with was it Robbie Knievel out here and a few other people. But I was with him last, was I think before he, like a couple years before he passed away. We were down at Walt Disney doing a Disney Mania thing that we were invited to. He was doing signatures and stuff. It was pretty neat. The last major film we did here was Captain Fantastic with Viggo Mortensen. It was more the beginning of the film for us. They just wanted a black-tailed deer and in that scene, uh, which we had here. So pretty good. I haven't watched the movie myself, but I hear it's a really good movie. It was a good book too. Uh, so, so the farm itself, we're regulated by the USDA Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, also known as APHIS, which carries out random, unannounced inspections at least once a year. Our last random was just about 4 weeks ago in January. Um, in addition, they have a new requirement now for relicensing every 3 years, which started 3 years ago. So we were one of the lucky first to start it. And now tomorrow is our scheduled relicensing. And it just so happens to be the same inspector that was here in January. Go figure. Which we had no non-compliances. And in the USDA world, non-compliances mean that you follow everything that's in the animal welfare guide. They call them non-compliances. They're not citations. Everybody tries to associate them with citations. It's not a citation. It's just, hey, you need to do this and fix it this week kind of a thing. So part of the USDA requirements is we have to have a primary vet care plan. So you have to have a primary vet either on staff or have one out in the the real world, which is a school animal hospital for us. We've been with them for ever, it seems like. Um, Doc Thornton was with us for a while, and then Brian March we used quite a bit, and right now it's Heather Short. And I also use Melissa Board, who's a roving vet that mostly does hoof stock animals and horses and cattle and such.
Mhm.
Plus, I have two zoo veterinary specialists on hand. I can call at any time for anything that we need to come up with.
I bet over the years you've learned a lot about veterinary care yourself.
Yeah, quite a bit, enough to well, yeah, quite a bit. Uh, I can't prescribe or anything like that, but they'll give us the stuff that we need, and then we can administer most things ourselves. My brother and I, and one of my other employees, Eugene Pate, who's my animal care manager, um, have been trained in tranquilizing and the use of remote capture devices, which is, dart guns.
Mhm.
I just came back from a 2-day course in San Diego 2 weeks ago, trying to keep up with the current times and stuff. But so we do a lot of our own tranquilizing so the vet can get here and not have to waste too much time. If we have work to do, such as pulling a tooth or something that's necessary that needs to be done. Um, so they have to come out twice a year. So not only do we have the random once a year and a relicense every 3 years, we also have to have our veterinarian come out twice a year to go around or more. And during that time, the wolves have to be physically checked now annually uh, with hands-on. Any canine, that's something that came up a couple of years ago through the legislature, that all dogs, all canines, need to have annual hands-on physicals, including
Why
labs.
did why did the legislature select wolves and canines and not other
Well,
animal species?
it's not wolves specifically, but most wolves in captivity now, even in the wild, have dog DNA in them. So they consider most wolves to be hybrid dogs or high content wolf dogs. Um, and it's not so much as the legislature, not local either, but it got put into one of the omnibus bills for the farm bill or something like that. Some activist group got it through and added it on that canines in general need to have a hands-on, and they're kind of going after, alleged puppy mills and places such as that. Or
Got
they're
it.
trying to make you believe that that's what they're doing, but they're just trying to throw a lot of roadblocks on people to make it as much distasteful to work with animals in general. My opinion on that one, but that's what they seem to be doing. So it's not such a big thing. It's a problem with wolves, high content wolf dogs. When you're in there with them on one-on-one, they know something is out of the ordinary. They like routine, and once you got 4 or 5 people that start to crowd around their house, they know what's up and they go to the very back of the pen, and so you have to go in and try, and usually have to knock them out uh,
Mm.
because they got pretty large teeth and strong jaws. So to be safe, it's best to knock them out. Don't like doing it because they're getting to be pretty old now. They're 16,
Mm.
um, 14 to 16 on some of them. So at that age, you kind of worry about uh, tranquilizing on an older animal.
Hmm.
Can be a bit traumatic.
What's the typical lifespan of a wolf?
Anywhere from 12. We've had them go as high as up to 20 here. We have a pretty good track record of longevity, and they're pretty geriatric right now. They start to lose hearing, and like most large breed dogs, they get hip dysplasia, they get little problems with their backsides, they get a little weak in the back. So you have to be really mindful and watch uh, on how you have to watch the routines and see when things go out of routine. Uh, the amount of water that's being drunk a day, how much food they eat, to see if they got problems. Because wild animals are really good and at not letting you know that there's a problem. Because out in the wild, if you let your competitor know that you're weak, you become, dead. So they're pretty good at hiding. So you got to watch them really well,
So,
especially in the older ages.
Pat asks, how many wolves do you have and are you breeding them?
No, we're not breeding them. We have 8 total right now. 4
And then
pairs.
James asked, are you growing or shrinking your wildlife stock?
We're trying to maintain right now with the lawsuit that we had. Um, Word was out there in the industry, so we didn't get any more calls for quite some time for rehoming because nobody knew what was going to be happening. That nobody wanted to, to have their name associated at the time, because this particular group will pick up names as they go along through discoveries and stuff, and then they go after those folks and those folks and those folks. It kind of branches out. So
Got it.
people like to keep a low profile till things have resolved. So I did get a call a couple months ago. There's a lady looking to relocate 2 uh, serval cats, which they're exotic type, fancy. They're not really a house cat, but um, they're really large house cats, basically. But she's relocating from Florida up to Washington, and her new place doesn't have what she needs for their housing requirements, and she heard about us, wanted us to. She asked us if we could take them in for her. So we should be looking at that later this spring. So we'll have a couple serval cats. The only thing that we really breed is the hoof stock right now, and we just let them do what hoof stock does. We do trade out the bull elk around because we have some with different genetic makeup. So we pick a different bull every couple of years to make sure genetics and DNA doesn't get washed around. And then so many buffalo is not a big concern for those guys. So we're also closely monitored by the Washington State Department of Agriculture, the ecology, because we're so close to the rivers and the creeks. Of course, Fish and Wildlife and some individuals in the county. It's mostly building stuff, but and the river as well. We have a farm plan that's with the CCD, County Conservation District, and an RCS. We have a disaster preparedness plan that I just rewrote and finished a couple of days ago. It's a new thing that came out with USDA about 3 years ago, that all facilities that are licensed with USDA has to have a contingency plan for animals that are in your facility. So we had to work that. We already had one prior to that, but it wasn't exactly what USDA was looking for. So we had to do some different work on that. Of course, when you sit down trying to figure out what catastrophes and what emergencies could possibly happen, it snowballs into 100 different things. Try and plan to get it. Pick is the most most important. And I was on the board for the large group, which I heard there was a meeting a couple of weeks ago at the county to go over the emergency plan for animals. Um, so I was on the board that wrote that particular plan. This was before COVID, when I can't remember her name, Wisecup was in charge at the time, and then she passed away, and a new person came in, and we kind of fell away. So I missed that meeting because I was in San Diego at my class. I wanted to go to the county meeting to see what was going on with that. Um, but we are in that planning portion. Currently, I'm on the Dungeness River Management Team. Grandfather was one of the founding members of the board back in the 80s to work on. At that time, there was huge fecal coliform problems in the creeks and the streams. And so there was a lot of work done in those days trying to find the source because of the shellfish degradation in the bay. Ultimately, it turned out to be waterfowl and bad septic tanks, old systems and such. The board is still going strong. I got a meeting later this afternoon. Today's our meeting. So we're still involved with that. In 2024, we had 114,516 visitors, which is
Wow.
pretty close to average, between 110 and 120. It depends on who's got the disposable income, I guess. Which is about 36,000 vehicles that come through the farm and on the peninsula. In contrast, in 2008, when I took over the business, we were only getting 65,000 to 20,000 cars at that time. So through a lot of hard work here and some rebuilding some burned bridges, we're doing pretty good now.
Great.
During COVID, it was much bigger because we're the only thing that was allowed to be open. Northwest Trek and Woodland Park, they all had to close down. But we were allowed to be open because nobody got out of their car. So it was okay. Even though some animals could get COVID, it was mostly the big cats that were susceptible to COVID. And since none of our visitors can get, within 10 feet, it was okay to let them go around in their cars. So if you guys have seen our parking lot, imagine that parking lot with 6 lanes of cars, all trying to come in through the gate, and they were across the road too, trying to get in. So it was packed cars. We were doing a car every 30 seconds through the gate to get them in and off the road. And it would start at like 10 a.m. and it wouldn't finish until like almost 4 o'clock. It was a lot of people were coming in. Animals were done with bread by 11. They just quit eating bread. So, but the seagulls had fun with the bread. So the game farm bus that was out there, it was firstly initiated by Blackball Transport, the Coho Ferry. They were doing it for 2-3 years. And then they decided to go a different way when I can't remember his name. I talk to him all the time. He passed away a couple of years ago. He was a big push
Ryan.
on the bus.
Ryan.
Who was that?
Yeah, Ryan Mullane.
Yes, Ryan Mullane. I have his card still here on my desk, but yeah, we did a lot of work together on working with getting that set up. So last year, they were going to do the bus. They changed their contract, I think, to work with out of a Seattle-based company who was going to do tours with the bus, and then they decided they're not going to do it. So they offered us the bus to buy, so we bought that last summer. I think it was in September. I think we bought the bus, and we're making plans to see what we can do here to utilize the bus. Some people who don't want to go through with their cars, people that show up on motorcycles, don't have CDLs or anything like that, so it's got to stay on the farm. We can't drive out in town with it. Um, so we get quite a few visitors from around the world, around the globe, China, New Zealand, Canada. We've even had some from Madagascar. I don't know how true that is, but somebody put pins on our map from Madagascar. So I don't know if it's kids or if it's true, but we get quite a few groups of people that come through. Right now we're working on our exotic animal enclosures. We started working on that. That was one of the first things I started when I got here in 2008. We were just hitting our stride in 2018 where money was starting to finally come in. I was able to start affording more bulk items. We didn't have to stretch out so long in between. And then we got hit with that lawsuit in December of 2018, and we had to pretty much stop everything because one of their contentions was that the wolves didn't have enough room, and that's what we were starting to work on was the new wolf pens to make them bigger and more better. I guess it's a better thing of saying. So we had to stop in case we needed to make changes as a result of the suit or not. So a good 8 years went by, 6 years went by before we were allowed to start working on them again, which we did. But now the ground is frozen, so I got to wait a little bit longer to pound some posts into the ground and get that up and going. So just at that point in those days, we had already spent 300,000 or so just to get, 12-foot chain link, which you have to get special made, galvanized. It has to be at least 9 gauge. For most animals, they want, like the cats, the tigers and lions want 6 gauge, 9 gauge. The wolves can do 12, which we can get off the shelf, but nobody really makes 12-foot tall chain link, so you have to pay extra for that because they got to retool their machines. So we got a lot of that stock on hand now to start. In say 2019, we had to redo our entire perimeter fence around the farm. Even though we were already doing it at our own pace, a USA inspector said, "Oh, you need to fix your fence because you're working on your fence, so you need to finish it in 3 months." And we said, "No, we're not going to do it in 3 months. Can do it in 3 months."
Wow.
We told him it would take a year, and I had to write like a 2-page letter explaining why it was going to take a year. Mostly because of materials. It's like I say down here, it's 2 miles of perimeter fencing, uh, 11,000 feet of wire, and not just wire, but posts. And it has to be at least 8 feet tall for USDA regulations. And you have to worry about, flooding weather because some of this fence has to go across the creeks. And so when you have the creeks risen up, you can't really work in getting the fence across. So you have to wait till the low time to get things to go across. So it was just a lot of logistical type problems. It took a month, but USA finally let us go ahead with the waiver to take our year. And of course, like Scotty on Star Trek, we did it in 8 months, but a year sounds good. So we got that all done, and now we're working on our inside perimeter, which isn't not a problem. It's just we're just doing it to get rid of some pretty old posts. The fencing's fine. Trying to get away from the creosote railroad ties and get them out of the ground and put good wood in the ground. So currently we have about 23 full-time round the year staff. Doesn't include my brother and I, but we do our fair share of work around here as well. So in summer months we hire 10 additionals for seasonals, mostly to keep an eye on the tourists, a couple extra security drivers, drive-through attendants. And when our petting farm is open, we got to have a couple people in there making sure kids aren't running around or trying to bully the goats. Yeah, so they don't, yeah. Right now we currently have about 396 animals total, and about 28 different species and subspecies of animals that we have. I don't think I put it on my slides, but we have lions, tigers, and bears, the wolves. Still have a zebra, some emu, and llamas. And pretty soon we'll have a serval. We've had servals before in the past. We've had quite a few. And working with Doc Thornton in the day, from what Clay had told me, one of our former employees, we were working with the snow leopard survival plan. They were having trouble getting snow leopards to survive in captivity to try and repopulate their species. And we were one of the few that were able to succeed in that and work with other zoos in succeeding in the snow leopards.
Mm.
And I think Doc Thornton had quite a bit of an input on that. I'm not sure Sean might know more about that, but
Yeah, we actually had two of them down at the clinic for a week at a time. I I remember just because, you know, I got a chance to see them and everything. And he brought someone in from Pullman, from WSU, and they actually did research with a guy out of Texas A&M, and that was kind of, they were trying to figure out, was there a therapy to use or anything else, and really it just came down to how to treat them in a darker environment, because of the way they would breed is what I remember coming down to.
the way they were breeding, some of it was nutrition and getting the right nutrients to them because they live in a different environment than other cats. Being snow leopards, they're up in the high mountains. Obviously, a lot of snow, so it was a lot of rabbit and hares was their big diets, and small rodents. Um, it was a matter of getting their diet in control as well. Uh, so it was pretty good. That was one of our big success stories, along with we were part of the Red Wolf program for a while back in the 80s, I believe it was. So anyway, um, so most of our animals come from overstock facilities. Every now and then, Fish and Wildlife will rehome some animals here. Right now, we have some Sika deer, also known as Japanese deer, but they are, from what I understand, part of the elk family, which is why they were confiscated from another farm because they didn't want them to accidentally crossbreed. Though they're like uh, a Washington elk is 10 times the size of a Sika deer, so I'm not sure how that would play into the reproduction cycle, but they say it can be done, so they brought them here for us to have. And some sanctuaries have replaced some animals here in the past. Get a lot of cougar, a lot of bobcat, because usually bobcats, they think people can have them in their house or their apartment buildings or whatnot because they're just a big giant kitty cat. Then they get turned in for some reason or other. They got to find a new home for them. And it is illegal to take anything out of the wild. So, like if somebody came across a small family of raccoons, um, and they want to bring it into us, we have to call Fish and Wildlife to see if it's okay to take in these animals and the circumstances behind it. A lot of times they'll do it. Sometimes it'll go to the sanctuary up there at was it Valley Rescue as well. Let's see, a couple more slides left. We do our own hay. We have 4 of our own fields. We do about 12 other fields locally that looking just to cut their grass so they don't get in trouble by the fire marshal. We need about 9,000 bales, 80-pound bales, and we still buy approximately 245 more tons of additional hay, uh, mostly from Eastern Washington and Oregon. The meat that's donated for us for the carnivores is done through the local dairies and other hobby farms. Their old horses are not going to make it through winter, so they want them euthanized and things like that. We process all that out here on site. So it's about 200 pounds of meat to the carnivores weekly. And we also shop at Costco for fresh fruit and chicken and some protein mix and so on. We've added some shade shelters over the years in the bear and elk fields. We put more covers out there, some more lean-tos for the bears to kind of go up underneath to lay in the shade. And put some shade cloth over the cats during the summer months so they have some shade outside. And so things that stay the same, obviously taking care of the animals. Always got to clean up after them. And being an old farm that's been here for a couple 100 years, a lot of repairing. And I got to pay those bills. In the future, we're always looking to improve and get better. So we got to, keep working on our infrastructure, on our buildings, fencing, of course. Trying to come up with what's learned in the past that we need to fix and incorporate in anything new. We're going to get into some field rotation, pasture management, try and help bring down the impact of hay. Of course, herd management, they can get out of control pretty quick if you don't keep the herds small. So we have to do some selling or some auctions. We're working on the new wolf pens right now, and a couple of my guys are out making some shade trees out of, we have a lot of willow. So it's really good to stick a branch in the ground and get a willow tree out of it, which is really big and big overall envelope. So we've been doing that and trying to get back to the guided walk tours for the public to learn about animals and such. But before I go back to walk tours, I need to have good looking pens and enclosures. So that's what we're working on. And
Got it.
I believe that's all I have at the moment.
All right, terrific. Thank you so much, Robert.
Welcome.
So does anybody have questions for Robert? It's such a historical landmark for all of us. And I know we've got some people that grew up here. So, Sean, do you have any other further questions?
No, honestly, I'm just, thanks for jumping on. I appreciate it. I love the
welcome.
game farm, so it's awesome that it's still running. I think it's just, it's an incredible effort, I know, and I couldn't even imagine the financial burden that it is. So I appreciate you guys still keeping it going.
Well, good.
John had
Maybe
a
to work.
question about bird flu. Have you guys had any issues around bird flu?
We've been working with avian bird flu has been around for, 3 or 4 years now. We did have an eagle 2 years ago. We found out on the elk field that wasn't looking too good, so we called Center Valley Rescue, and they came out and picked it up. And I learned a month later that it did have bird flu. But as far as us, the farm itself, we haven't had any issues with bird flu.
Okay, that's good
So
news.
we're watching out for it all the time.
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, just one other question. Does the Smith Dairy no longer becoming a dairy, does that impact you guys at all? Did you gain any beef from there?
The only real effect is on the amount of times that we'd have to go there and pick up an animal. There's still going to be in the cattle business,
Yeah, for a few years.
for breeding and stock like that. Yeah, right now in our freezers we have a whole year's supply of red meat for the carnivores. And with with the experience of other farmers that are doing just cattle, we'll keep up just fine. Unless I get 20 more lions or tigers or something, then that might be, be a bit of a problem.
Must be a big freezer.
It is a very big freezer. It's almost too big. I wanna shrink it down a little bit so it's not such a high roof. But it was built in the 70s with back when they were using sawdust as insulation. So we've been fighting the sawdust insulation problem for a little bit. But it's very big. We've got 4 huge bins that we rotate through. So none of the meat gets too old.
Awesome.
Cycle it through.
This is
Plus
Pat.
fish.
This is Pat McCauley, and I live on Three Crabs. And I can tell you when you go get your mail, well, better yet, when you used to get the paper, you can hear the animals roar because it's before feeding time in the morning. And there's such a cool, I'm sure Colleen hears them too from her house. It is a really, really cool thing to hear animals roar. We don't hear the wolves howl. It doesn't seem to come our way, but in the early morning, we can hear them. The other thing I want to ask you is you said you were working on wolf pens, improving their habitat. Now, that doesn't mean commingling the pack, right? It means still they're going to be individuals because we know how pack oriented they are now. But that's not what you're doing. You're creating better environment for where they are now.
Well, we already have one already set up the way we wanted it to be, and we'll always keep them in pairs until
Okay.
breeding time comes around. Then we separate for breeding. Um, there is a drug out there that will do birth control for wolves, but it's not the best thing for wolves with all that chemicals and all that. So we just do separation. They still cohabitate, same fence line and all that. They still have social interactions through the fence. But as far as being in a group of like 8 of them, then they become a little bit more dangerous that way. Especially if you're going to go in and do some work because they like to surround you a bit. Uh, you know, big numbers means bigger bravado, and you're always having to keep your head on a swivel to keep an eye on who is where, so they don't come up behind you and sneak a quick nip out of your backside. It's usually best to work with 2, but even the 2 is pretty tough. But they're all hand raised. They've been hand raised on the bottle. It's not that they're going to do much as far as tear you apart, but they're just excited to be around you, so they're always wanting to jump up, and you have a 110-pound wolf that wants to jump up in your face and say hi. It can be overwhelming.
I don't know about the rest of you, but I have to think Robert has the most interesting job of the group today.
Yeah.
Pretty
He
interesting.
wins.
It's a good time. I enjoy seeing the tourists when they come through with their kids and all that. They all have excitement going on, and of course they always love the big giant purple tongue from the buffalo, and the snotty noses on their windows.
I have one more comment. I can't help it because I love the game farm. So, at one family reunion in Minnesota, the kids were asked what was their most favorite memories of their life, and they ranged from high school and college down. The ones who had come to visit us, bar none, said that Olympic Game Farm was their most favorite place they'd ever been, unless they'd been to Disney World. Disney World came first, Game Farm came
Yeah.
second. But if they'd never been to Disney World, the Game Farm was their most favorite experience.
Oh, good. It's nice.
That's cool.
I hear that quite a bit, people across the U.S. Even when I was
Yeah.
in the Navy, somebody found out, somehow I talked about it once or twice, working at the game farm. My parents and relatives, I've had people on the ship come look for me and say, "Hey, are you related to the Olympic Game Farm?" I said, "Yes." In the family of grandparents, they're all like, "Oh, we love going through there." And this is in the Navy when I was in the Persian Gulf or Indian Ocean or something. It's like, wow, okay,
That's
pretty
cool.
well known.
Mhm. So one other question John wrote, do animals actually damage cars?
Very rare, and it's usually because People are trying to get, are using the bread to get whoever's their passenger to get the screams and squeals they can get on video or whatever. And they're trying to get the animal to stick their head inside the window. And a mirror might get knocked, or a bigger bull might come over to a lesser bull and push them out of the way, and they swing their head and they hit a mirror, getting away from the big bull. But it's pretty rare. For the elk, especially the bull elk, when they get their antlers come out of velvet, we'll take the big bulls and we trim off the antlers to put them back out in the field. We do keep one of them with the antlers because people like to get their pictures with them. And it's not just for the safety with the antlers, but those antlers can tear up a wire fence pretty good. But yeah, that's about it. Usually just a mirror, or maybe some small scratches.
All right. Does Marcia put a note in here thanking you so much and sharing the iconic Olympic Peninsula treasure? And she says she loves sending visitors your way.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
We'll keep taking
So,
them.
yeah. Does anyone else have any comments or questions for Robert? Okay, if not, I think we'll call it a morning. Thank you so much, Robert, for doing this for us. And we'll
Sure.
have the recording and the slides up on our website later today and our YouTube channel.
Great. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for listening and having
Yeah.
me here. It was
And
great.
congratulations to Sequim School District. It looks like that bond and levy is passing. Great news.
Oh, nice. Very good. My
Okay.
brother's been on that board.
Yeah. Thanks,
All right.
everyone.
We'll see
Bye-bye.
you. Thanks. Bye.